And Chris. So I now call to the podium our chair of the day, Rob McGuirk, to take over today's meeting.
Great, thank you very much, Kirsten Carroll. It really gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. I've met Ian through Rotary and been working with him on a few Indigenous matters, but he's been a fantastic Rotarian and has done some great work, as you'll hear. If I went through his whole CV, we'd probably be here for about 25 minutes because it's a huge list of things he's been involved in. I'll abbreviate though. So he's a Yorta man and a respected advocate for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. He's had a very distinguished career for over 3 decades spanning government and the community sectors. He's been instrumental in contributing to many Closing the Gap initiatives and advancing Aboriginal representation in high-level decision-making at both federal and state level. Ian has led strategic reforms in government and numerous organisations and remains deeply committed to advocacy and mentoring. He is, amongst others, the chair of the Indigenous Land and Sea Corporation, chair of the First Nations Foundation, a board director of the Healing Foundation, who's executive director of Aboriginal Affairs of Victoria, and a former chair of Connecting Homes Limited, a Victorian government stolen generation service. He's had many other directorships of significance, including the AICD, Australian Red Cross, Yarra Valley Water, Planning Panels Victoria, and the National Trust of Victoria. And in recognition of his work, he was recently awarded an honorary doctorate of business by Swinburne University of Technology for his significant contributions to Indigenous design and reconciliation. He's had an outstanding career, and as I say, there's a whole lot of list of other things he's been doing that would be here for ages if I ran through them. So a great pleasure, I'll introduce Ian Hamm.
And I always think with that bio, I sometimes think, gee, that bloke sounds impressive. I'd love to meet him because it's not me. I'll tell you that to begin with. Can everybody hear me? Because no? Right, I'll do that. Yeah. That's better, yeah. The downside is I very much want to karaoke right now, and you don't want me to do that. It's always a pleasure to come here, but first of all, as a Yorta man, it's my obligation to acknowledge that I stand on the land of the Wurundjeri people and the Boonwurrung people, and I do that and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And it's always a pleasure to be asked to speak at Rotary. It's kind of like this is my 3rd or 4th time now, and do it every couple of years, which is always a good thing because it's, if you like, it's every couple of year check on where are we now and where are we going. I think one of the things to start with is always an overview of where we are now, which is always so different to where the world was the last time I spoke here. Where are we now in the world? To set the scene. Donald Trump is back in the White House. That wasn't happening the last time I spoke here. There's worldwide and national economic uncertainty that we haven't seen for a long time, like inflation. There's a whole generation who didn't know what that was. Now they really do. Australian politics is all over the shop. I mean, I thought I knew politics. Clearly, I don't, because it's getting harder to work it out every day. We have a Victorian election coming up with the least amount of predictability for I don't know how many years. I don't know if anybody else can forecast what's going to happen. I certainly can't. And I don't think anybody can legitimately do that. It's 5 months. A week's a long time in politics these days. A day is a long time. So 5 months from now is just, it's just an eternity. But the most improbable thing of all, the most unlikely thing of all in this world we live in, Carlton will probably make the finals. Who saw that coming? 6 weeks in, you saw it coming. I have to admit, that was probably when I was writing this list, I thought, what's the most absurd thing? I go back 6 weeks into the season, Michael Voss, Carlton hadn't won a game. It's all terrible, it's all bad. Now, they will probably make the finals. That's the most weird thing of the lot. However, I mean, these and so many other things could be the subject of a lunchtime talk, but I'm here to talk about Aboriginal matters and where we are now and where we're going. And I think that's a topical thing to talk about because it's just under 3 years since the referendum. As you will all know, There was a big lead up to it. There was a big expectation of it, and it was what it was. I'll be honest, I always knew it was going to lose. There was overreach, overconfidence, a lack of political hard-nosedness. There was a not understanding the Australian electorate or the Australian character. There was a whole bunch of things. There were those who didn't want to know about it. There were those who obviously had an issue with Aboriginal people being able to speak. There was a whole bunch of stuff. And the world moves on. There's a lot of soul searching after the referendum. I was one of them. And you remember I said I always knew it was going to lose, but many of you might recognise me from being out there fighting hard for it. I'm a bit like the pacifist until there's a war, and then I sign up to fight, even though I know it's going to be bad. A lot of soul searching, a lot of questions asked of others, but mostly of ourselves. Many people read many things into the result of the referendum. Some saw it simply as a rejection of the propositions in the referendum, that is Aboriginal recognition in the Constitution and the establishment of the voice. There were others who saw it as a repudiation of all things Aboriginal and have used that to say it's not only that, but everything. And indeed, there were others who saw it as an invitation to air grievances on a whole lot of issues that had nothing to do with the referendum or Aboriginal Australia, Aboriginal affairs. It ripped the Band-Aid off the sore, and a whole bunch of stuff came out of it that had nothing to do with us, but the opportunity was taken. And that was just under 3.5 years ago. The result of the referendum, I can tell you, was keenly felt by Aboriginal people across the nation. While a very few Aboriginal people celebrated it, most of us grieved for the lost possibility and sometimes still ponder what might have been. But just ponder it, but don't focus on it. You do have to contemplate your losses and never forget them, because if you choose to ignore those, you're doomed to repeat them again. You can't just focus on the good things. You also have to engage with that which ain't so great. Nonetheless, the world moves on, and things move on pretty quickly. I mean, we live in a 24-hour news cycle, right? Today's news is gone within not even 24 hours. It's gone in 12 hours. That's how quick the world moves at the moment. There are a number of us in the room who will be old enough to remember the saying, today's front page is tomorrow's fish and chip wrapper, right? Most of us, there's a young fellow that I'm looking at. No idea what that means. No, that's, I say that to my kids and they go, well, that you have to say, this is a newspaper, and in the older, anyway. But that still holds true, you know. Today's news is gone tomorrow. And the question for Aboriginal people that we had to ask ourselves, that things have quickly changed. The question wasn't so much where have we been and what has happened. It quickly changed to, so where do we go from here? We rolled the dice, or the dice was rolled for us on the referendum, and we lost. A lot of banking went into it and we lost. But the world moves on. Where do we go from here? What is our future? What is our place in our country? So today I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So there's one at the Victorian level and one at the national level. They're quite different, but they have the same outcome, the same objective in mind. And that is, how do we advance Aboriginal people in modern Australia? Confusingly as modern Australia is, as you noted, Barb, modern Australia is a moving conglomeration of ever-changing things. It's not if it ever is one thing on one day, sure as God made little green apples, it'll be completely different the next day. It's like those days when you get out of bed, everything goes perfect for a day. All it takes is somebody to stub their toe the next morning when they get out of bed and the whole world goes to hell in a handcart. It's like that. So I'll start with Victoria. So in Victoria, as you will all know, the state has entered into a treaty with its First Peoples, the traditional owners of Victoria, led by the traditional owners of Victoria. Just to clear something, or to explain to you, not every Aboriginal person resident in the state of Victoria is what we call a traditional owner. They are not descended from or belong to the tribal groups that were in the state of Victoria before the arrival of non-Aboriginal people. We actually have had, or in Victoria for a while, we had the biggest immigration of Aboriginal people into this state from every other part of Australia. Aboriginal people came from Victoria, the same reasons a lot of other people do. The greatest economic opportunity and the most socially progressive. That's why people come to Victoria. That's who we are as Victorians. I mean, even in the referendum, although it lost to Victoria, it was 45-55. That put us at least 10% ahead of every other state and territory. We were still socially progressive, even in, well, from my perspective, the loss of that question. So the treaty is fundamental change. It's not just another thing. It's changed a number of things, the nature of a number of things, but there's two in particular. These are the relationship between Victoria's First People and the Victorian Parliament and the government. And I say the Parliament rather than just the government, it's the Parliament. And the second, and this is about us as a people, it's a shift from the right of self-determination to the responsibility of self-determination. Contemplate that for a minute. A shift from the rights to the responsibilities. That's a huge shift. Too often, I think just generally, people often talk about their rights, but who talks about their responsibilities? For us as Aboriginal people, it was a shift that is necessary, but it's a shift where we give real meaning to the term self-determination, responsibility for ourselves. For the first time, Aboriginal Victorians will be able to engage with the government from a position not of subservience, but from a position of relative equity. And I say relative because the supremacy of Parliament remains and is unquestioned. To clear that up for anybody you know outside of here, whoever has that in their mind, Parliament reigns supreme, as it should, as it must. Parliament has the ultimate authority. But the treaty allows us to engage with Parliament on a relatively equal footing and with government on a relatively much more equal footing. What this does is allow for the free exchange of ideas and positions with ministers and governments, and that is a good thing. That is an important thing. I don't think anybody in this room could put their hand on their heart and say, Parliament, governments, ministers are full of wisdom and knowledge that the rest of us are limited by the glowing of that. I think we all know that's not true, right? Ministers are ministers. For those of us who've worked in government, it is like a lolly shop that you have no idea what can turn up. Parliament is the ultimate lolly shop. And some of it in the cabinet might get inside the big bag, but that doesn't mean they're that great. Some of them are really good, some of them not so much. So for a mechanism to be built in that allows for, that encourages, indeed requires the free exchange of ideas and positions is a good thing. It means that Aboriginal Victorians will no longer be the passive recipients of policy initiatives. In the olden days, when I say the olden days, I mean about 20 years ago and after that, but a lot before it, the way the world worked was ministers or governments would come up with ideas, tell the Aboriginal community, this is what we've got in store for you, we'll consult with you, which means we'll talk to you and do what we're going to do anyway and then do it. Not the best outcome. But the arrangement we have now, it means we have skin in the game of what government will and won't do. It means we have to play an active and participatory role in negotiating outcomes that have real consequences. You know that saying when your kids or some people still talk about, they say they should do this and they should do that. Well, that's what happens or happened a lot in the Aboriginal community. They should do this, they should do that. Eventually that tires and runs out of legs. This is now we should do this and we should be part of that and we should be part of what happens to us. It also means that the members of the First Peoples Assembly, our elected body, are answerable to their constituencies. That is, the First Nations people of Victoria. I can tell you that that's actually changing the dynamic in the Aboriginal community, that our own representatives are answerable to us. Every one of you who has been elected anywhere, local government, if you've been in Parliament or any elected position, Madam President, you'll find your constituents will let you know in no uncertain terms what they think, and that's a good thing. That's changed the dynamic. So the architecture of the treaty and its components, they mightn't be perfect, but that's okay. I think too often people want perfection from the get-go. That's not how the real world works. You come up with something, you try it, you improve it over time. And so the treaty and its constituent parts, in my view, could have been done better, but it is what it is, not chucking baby out with bathwater. COVID showed us that the Australian Commonwealth is still a work in progress. The United States, which celebrates its 250th anniversary on Saturday since the signing of the Declaration of Independence, is most certainly an imperfect union, to quote some words out of the opening parts of the Constitution itself. And so in Victoria, we are looking to build on this, looking for Aboriginal Victorians to have a real and meaningful say in our relationship with government. But it's also beyond government. What is our relationship with wider Victoria? Where do we go in the long term about our place in our own society? Bearing in mind that we have to be responsible for that ourselves. So that notion of moving from the right of self-determination, which is a right for everybody, but accepting with every right, there is a responsibility. It's that yin and yang thing, you know? So nationally, what's happening? So at the national level, obviously the federal government had a deep investment in the referendum. It had obviously the Prime Minister was backing it. Part of the campaign was also seen as, to be honest, it was politics raw. Presented itself, and politics being politics, it was used in politics. Rightly or wrongly, it was what it was. So the federal government has not backed away from its commitment to social justice and outcomes and rights, but it very much sees, as does the Aboriginal community, sees you can't lift yourself up by that and that alone. So in terms of national level, where do we go from here? Where does Aboriginal Australia focus about? And it is about fundamentally equity. What is the path to us having a better place in Australian society and having equity with our fellow Australians? Well, it's best summed up in the immortal words of the 1992 Clinton presidential campaign, it's the economy, stupid, because we haven't really used it before. Aboriginal advancement, for the most part, is seen through the lens of social policy. So having been a public servant for 32 years, my view of the universe is broken into two parts. There's social policy and there's economic policy. That's just how the world works, how the universe works. Aboriginal affairs has traditionally been looked at through the lens of social policy, and economic policy is hardly being used. So social policy is generally about policy, programs, projects that seek, A, to stop things getting worse and reduce disadvantage. That's what social policy fundamentally does. In the space of Aboriginal affairs, it's the often referred to closing the gaps or closing of the gaps. But the truth be known, social policy approaches alone will not bring us equity with our fellow Australians. It simply cannot do it alone. It's one of those things where on a good day, things don't get worse. And very occasionally you make a marginal improvement on something. That's unfortunate, but it's true. It's a generalisation, and I imagine every one of you could pick a hole in that straight away, but on the over arc of time and across the whole spectrum, social policy has limited capacity to uplift people. And additionally, and probably more importantly, the referendum demonstrated the limits of a purely rights-based, justice-driven approach to addressing the life circumstances of Aboriginal people. I know exactly where the lid is. I know where the line in the sand is. I know the boundary. And so for me, I will not ever back away from my people's rights, our search for justice, but I know that has limitations. If we should find the path to equity, then we have to broaden our toolkit. And the prime tool is the economy. Not just a bit of it, but the economy. It's a fundamental thing. Any economist worth their salt will tell you that meaningful participation in the economy is the single biggest contributor to uplifting individuals and communities. Look around this room. Look out the windows. Look around this country. Read Adam Smith, which I did, The Wealth of Nations. Read any economist worth their salt and they will tell you meaningful economic participation is how you uplift people and uplift their lives and uplift their futures. And so, all things going right, they leave a better life for their children than the one that they were born into. That is just sky is blue, grass is green type of stuff. And it goes to that thing that if you have money in your pocket, you have less social problems. It's pretty simple. You can have food on the table. You can have, for argument's sake, you can have a roof over your head. I think that's still sorting itself out, but you get the gist of it. This means though you don't lessen the effort on addressing social policy issues like health and justice and fundamental rights, because trading off social policy for economic policy would still give you the same zero-sum game. Trying to create wealth, but having no rights, it still doesn't work. You've got to have both things. It's that thing of doing everything all at once, doing it properly and over a long period of time. So, what have I been doing since the referendum? Well, I've been up to stuff, along with many others, up to stuff. Where do we go from here? It's the economy, stupid. So, to that end, we have started work and are working on a macroeconomic framework for Aboriginal Australia. Not just parts of the economy, not just parts of Aboriginal Australia, but a macroeconomic framework for the whole of Aboriginal Australia. That's urban, regional, rural and remote. It's an effort being led by the Coalition of Aboriginal People Organisations, the First Nations Economic Alliance, which I'm a part of, and the Commonwealth Government. And we've signed a tripartite agreement called the First Nations Economic Partnership. One of the things you noticed in Aboriginal affairs, there are always grand titles. Everything has a grand title to it, so that's important to know. And the Commonwealth contribution, this took some doing. It will get a chapter in that book I keep threatening to write one day. But this is really important. The Commonwealth effort is not being led by the Minister for Indigenous Australians or the National Indigenous Australians Agency. The minister responsible for the Commonwealth effort on this is the Treasurer, Tim Chalmers, and his department, the Department of Treasury and Finance. That is a fundamental breakthrough that took a couple of years to get done, but the Treasurer is the minister responsible for delivering the Aboriginal economic framework. He's the guy who's got to make this work. It's not just a program in the agency of the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. This now becomes part of how the Treasurer thinks about we advance the Australian economy. It means that we can think about the fuller, broader and deeper understanding of the Australian economy and how it can be used to uplift Aboriginal people. To reach its potential, though, it means not focusing on what's bad about being Aboriginal, about what we aren't. Too often we go to, if I did this years ago, but if I ask people in this room, let's go around, a dozen people give me a dozen things about what's wrong with being Aboriginal, and we can't leave this room until we do. We'd be out of this room in about 10 minutes flat, I reckon. It's easy to do. Life expectancy, criminal justice system, so forth. If I said, give me a dozen things that's good about being Aboriginal, we'd be ordering dinner here because we wouldn't be leaving, I reckon, until after we've had dinner. A dozen things that's good about being Aboriginal. It's not how people think. However, with this economic approach, a fundamental premise of it means looking at what Aboriginal people do and can, with opportunity, bring to the Australian economy, horizontally and vertically as well. That's an important thing. What do blackfellas bring to the economy? What can we bring to the Australian economy that benefits every Australian? Too often we're perceived as taking things. Too often it's about fixing what's wrong with us. But what have we got going for us that we can bring to the economy? And there's a lot. The key to realising this, though, is it's not all about the government. That's the other part of this. Social policy is usually the confine of government. The economy isn't. The economy, 90% plus of it exists in the private sector. And yet we've never attempted to harness it, work with it, be part of it. We've been at the margins in the government and in our own economy as well. So we need to engage with the banking and finance sectors, the manufacturing sector, technology sectors, every sector that you can think of, but basically the length and breadth of the Australian economy, to bring us to the economy and bring what they can to help us be part of the economy. That's a fundamental shift too. The banking sector, and I've done some work on this for about 15 years now, and the superannuation sector, they're actually probably lead movers in this direction about rethinking about looking at Aboriginal people as a business opportunity to work with as partners on, rather than a small social program we do over here under ESG. It's taking a while, it's building, but three of the major banks have all now had a substantial shift in how they think about relating to the Aboriginal economy. And seeing that it's a business opportunity that if they don't grab hold of, their competitors will. That's a real shift. The ultimate objective for all this is to make Aboriginal people as economically independent from government as any other Australian. That's a fundamental objective of it. Not only equity, but also to have the same relationship with government that every other Australian has. That is, they tax us too much. They only talk to me when they want my vote, and they're all hopeless crooks anyway. I want us to get to that relationship. It will not be easy and it won't be quick, but it will go a long way to achieving that long-held aspiration for us of self-determination with all of its attendant responsibilities and obligations. There are people, though, who will not support either of these propositions I've spoken about today. Might even be some people in this room, and that's okay. This is the contest of ideas. But to be clear, though, this contest must be about how we advance my people. It's not about maintaining the status quo, or indeed how we might return to some mythical golden age where we knew our place in the world. And I don't think it's just us where that mythical golden place wants to be, about people knowing their place in the world. Takes me back to where I started today, which is the shift in the post-referendum environment. The treaty and its component parts are all about responsibility, of self-determination, and economic participation is about financial and wealth independence to live a happy, meaningful, purposeful life. And as I said, to ensure that our children have a better life than the one we were born into. I am so very conscious of that as a father, you have no idea. Surely there can be no greater goal for all Australians than this. And that includes us as well. I'll finish there and I'm happy to take questions.
While we're waiting,
Well, since I've got it, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So one of the problems, of course, secure about the voice is if you don't play vote, because
Yep.
else can happen. There's some of our treaties. We've now got a working example of the treaty here in Victoria.
Yep.
The legislated the voice in South Australia. So there's two working models now.
Yep.
Being abolished as we go along, because that can dispel a lot of those concerns about what would happen if we did this. So that would have been as well.
Yeah, obviously with those two models, they're work in progress. They're not perfection, as I said before. You learn from them, you see where it takes us, see how it might be applied in other jurisdictions, how it mightn't be applied in other jurisdictions. So that learning as we go is a critical thing. The important thing about them is that you've got to do new stuff. You've got to try new things. If you keep doing the same stuff and expect a different outcome, as Einstein has had attributed to him, whether he said it or not is not true, but if you keep doing the same stuff and expect a different outcome, you're an idiot, right? So you have to try new things. This is imperfect, but that's okay. So in answer to your question, Rob, yes, there's always continuing monitoring. Yes, things will adapt, they have to. If you don't, you stagnate and you drop off the perch, as it were.
Imagine I raised our hands together.
It was a race. You did actually.
Ian, congratulations, by the way. Starting to become a success soon will lead is public intellectual here on the radio. I wanted to just ask about the referendum. I thought it was something low reach by the government, and I wondered whether separating the two issues, recognition in the Constitution and the voice of minorities and positive result.
Yeah, in fairness to the government, the driver came from within the Aboriginal community itself. The government followed the lead it was given. So in fairness to the government, the overreach generated from within the Aboriginal community. I'll be honest about that. So the government didn't execute it well, but where it started wasn't entirely with the government. If the questions had been separated, or if there was only one question, if the question had been, should Aboriginal people should Aboriginal people be recognised in the Australian Constitution as having been here first? If that was the only question, I have no doubt it would have won, because it's a statement of fact. Blackfellas were here before 1788. Should we put that in the document? Yep, we should. Let's just put that there. I have no doubt that would have won, because it is a statement of fact. The issue of the voice, that is a constitutional enshrined mechanism for a particular part of the community to speak to the government, that was the fatal flaw. This is as I get older, I get freer about what I speak. Australians, by their very nature, we are a very fair people. If we see something is wrong, we will fix it. But there are times when we're not a very generous people. When we think somebody's getting something that we're not, we kneecap it. It's a cross between tall poppy, it's a cross before, oh, they get something I'm not. That's what the voice was perceived as, how it could be dealt with and so forth. In answer to your question, Reg, I would have only gone with one question, and that is, should Aboriginal people be recognised in the Constitution for being here first? Well, yeah, because it's a fact. That would have won. That would have enabled a platform to build many other things on that could be changed over time as need be. Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. Australia, let's talk about Melbourne because we're here, is awash with restaurants of every nation, Korean, Japanese, you name it, we have it. These restaurants, the catering industry has led to economic prosperity and cultural awareness. Where do you see a place for Indigenous or Indigenous fusion restaurants to be recognisable, to hold their valued place amongst that community? And if you think it's a good idea, what could Rotary do to help that on its way?
Just to be clear, the answer I'm about to give you, that question was not a Dorothy Dixer. That's a genuine one from the floor. Okay, so Aboriginal cuisine or Aboriginal infusion or First Nations infusion in the Melbourne gastronomic scene, I think it is lacking, and we should do something about it. There are a number of small catering businesses. Now, in terms of an actual restaurant, glad you asked that question, because I do know of one which, not on whatever that is, should be opening up in the not too distant future in Federation Square. So do people know where the Koori Heritage Trust is? In the Birrarung building, it's now called, used to be the Yarra building. If you face the trust, there's a an empty restaurant just to the left, just to the right of the entrance. That is going to be the place of an Aboriginal owned restaurant, which will do the whole fusion thing. I hope within the next 3 months, I have a bit of an inside running on that. You're right. I mean, it's the reason the Koori Heritage Trust, more importantly, is in Fed Square. If Fed Square is the social and cultural hub of Melbourne, then it has to have an Aboriginal presence. How can it be if it doesn't have one? You know, it's part of the underpinning of this city, of this place, a continuing and ongoing Aboriginal presence in our social and cultural hub. Regardless of what you think of the architecture, people always get round Fed Square. It's important to be seen there every day. And the food expansion will be part of that as well. So what can Rotary do? Occasionally, perhaps have a lunch down there, just occasionally. That would help it. Maybe some catering, that'd help it too.
Great, well, thanks for that, clear message too. So we're going to do our lunches down there, isn't it? Okay, you achieve it. But on behalf of everyone, I'd really like to thank you, Ian, for your presentation today. And I know most of us walk in one world and find how hard it is to do. Walking two worlds as you do constantly and moderating and working in both fantastic achievement. Congratulations.
Thanks, Rob.
The title, of course, we have some genuine 200% straight socks here above the broad as you're walking in these two worlds. One from each world, I think is the right.
I still play cricket and I wear the Rotary socks because they're white.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for attending. And thanks to Barbara for your reflection today and our MC, past, present, Peter Dakin. And many thanks to our setup and receptions team for their efforts to make it happen. A reminder that next week, being the second Wednesday, there is no lunch scheduled. In its place, we have, sorry, I have to take, I'm nearly about to pass out as I say this, it's called Go Pies. So, whatever that is. So being a Melbourne supporter, but anyway, Go Pies Catering has organised a breakfast meeting of volunteering Thursday, the 9th of July, so not Wednesday, at the Salvo's Magpies Nest Cafe. And our next lunch will be here, number 35 on the 15th of July